Hello. Hi, everyone. And good evening. Thank you for coming, rain and all. We really appreciate you making the trip to this exciting presentation. It is my great pleasure and honor to welcome you to our second annual inclusion event, co-organized by the Special Education Alliance of Cheltenham and United Parents Group. Last year, we decided to host our first event together, and we chose the ever-relevant topic of inclusion because we wanted to highlight one of the greatest strengths of the Cheltenham community, which is diversity. We did it under the topic of presuming competence, and this year we decided to grow and stretch the reach of our inclusion event under the theme of focusing on strengths and resources. Now, in the education world, the word inclusion evokes the thought of school placement and having students receiving special ed services or require accommodations be in the same classroom or activity as the students who do not. However, SEAC and UPG want to underline that inclusion is a practice that extends beyond the classrooms into the community, and part of the process of embracing differences in ability requires the recognition of everyone's strengths and fostering their talents. We do it for the students with no disabilities, and we should also do it for each and every one of the students with a disability or learning difference. All of our students have dreams to fulfill and contributions to make. It is only through the recognition of their strengths and talents that we will help them achieve their aspirations and develop their full potential. I would also like to thank everyone who contributed to the planning and execution of this exciting event, especially Dr. Marseille, our superintendent, for his unwavering support. And without further ado, I'm very proud to present newly minted doctor, he got his PhD, Kerry Magro. Kerry is an award-winning and breakthrough advocate. He knew early on that he wanted to make a difference in the lives of others, and being diagnosed himself with pervasive developmental disorder called PDD-NOS when he was 4, his future growing up was very uncertain. Today, however, after many hours of therapy, but most importantly the support of his loving family, he has conquered many of his challenges and is now a professional speaker, a best-selling author, a movie consultant, and a nonprofit founder. So join me in welcoming Kerry, please.
Our next guest is an accomplished public speaker and activist who has devoted his life to helping others. Not bad for a guy who was completely nonverbal for the first few years of his life. But once Kerry Magro found his voice, he had a lot to say, including this message for his mom, one that resonated with so many moms around the globe. Watch.
My parents have always told me I'm special, so why am I special? And then later on, I realized that I'm even more special because I have autism.
Kerry Magro's childhood was marked with rough patches. He was completely nonverbal at age 2 and diagnosed with autism at age 4.
I just remember having difficulties trying to explain myself to the world around me.
When Kerry did speak, he struggled to express himself.
Most of my memories were simply just about that kid who wanted to communicate with the world around him, but didn't have the verbal means of actually doing that.
His mother, Suzanne, remembers watching her son have a hard time adjusting to the outside world.
He turned 2 and he was scared of everything. He was scared of the water, he was scared of the rain.
But as the years went on, Kerry slowly began to find his words.
When you can't communicate with the people you love the most in this world about even some of your basic needs, it gets really, really tough. So, but luckily, once I started talking, I never stopped talking.
Kerry went on to graduate high school, attend Seton Hall University, and then independent living. Today, Kerry is a professional speaker, activist, and mentor dedicated to educating people about autism. So this past Mother's Day, Kerry decided to thank not only his mom, but all the moms of nonverbal children with a Facebook video that went viral, racking up 1.3 million views.
To the moms who raise a loved one on the spectrum, this weekend is Mother's Day, and I want you to know how important you are to your child. You may not know it, but simply by being there for them, you're making a huge difference.
Hearing from parents, mothers of nonverbal children with autism, not being able to hear that from their child and just being like, thank you for saying that so articulately and just lovely for me, because it really made a difference.
I thought it was so great.
I think just because of her influence on me in my life and always never giving up, was the reason why I changed career paths to become a professional speaker, and I wouldn't have been able to do that without you. And you mean the world to me, and you always will.
When I needed someone to drive me to school, my mom was there. When I found my strengths, my mom was there. When we finally found the therapies that worked best for me, my mom was there.
There are no words, because without her, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Wow. This was a tough one today. Kerry is currently finishing up his doctorate in education while also writing a children's book about autism acceptance in addition to his public speaking. Good for him. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone. Hi, my name is Kerry Magro, and I just shared that video at the beginning of most of my presentations because if I leave you with anything tonight, it's that you truly realize no matter, we just heard the word inclusion here tonight, and no matter if you have a child who has a disability, or you're an educator who teaches individuals with special needs, or simply you're just somebody here tonight who just wants to learn more about inclusion, especially in the school systems, the one thing that I could tell you is that it truly, truly takes a village for us to get to where we want to go as a community. So I encourage every single one of you tonight to, if you haven't formed your village yet, get to meet people in this room who you might be able to collaborate with, who you might be able to talk with about things such as maybe your child's developmental milestones and some of the things that could really go into help them, and just try to be there for one another, because this universally, disability, we have a saying in the community, if you met one individual with a disability, you've met just that, one individual with a disability. It's very wide overall. It's a wide, wide, wide spectrum. So by being able to support one another, you could truly help make a difference in the lives of the people in this room. So during my journey, so my background was that 8 years ago, I got a wonderful opportunity from a group called the National Speakers Association to pursue a career in public speaking. I grew up wanting to be the next Larry Bird, but I actually have a -8 vertical leap. So if anyone is watching March Madness right now, feel bad for me. But growing up, it was because of my autism diagnosis, I had two key extreme interests. One of them was basketball, and then one was theater. And I used those as part of my early intervention to actually get me to the point where I am today, speaking in front of all of you. I decided to pursue a career in sport management for a little bit at Seton Hall University before receiving that scholarship opportunity from the National Speakers Association to pursue a career in public speaking. And now I have the wonderful opportunity to say that just as of last Tuesday, I passed my dissertation defense to become, to become Dr. Kerry Magro in educational technology leadership, to, ironically enough, become an adjunct professor at the university level to teach our educators about those with special needs. So this topic of inclusion that we're going to speak about tonight is very near and dear to my heart. I can't tell you enough how glad I am that every single one of you are in this room to really highlight this, one of the most important topics I think we currently have in the school systems today, especially in the United States. And we travel internationally to speak as well, but one of the key statistics we throw out there is that 1 in 5 Americans currently in the United States have a disability. And that's huge. In terms of the disability community, currently in the United States, it's one of the largest minorities in the United States overall. And the unfortunate thing that we see is that not only in our autism community, about 1 in 59 are diagnosed with autism today in the United States, and about 3.5 million Americans have autism. So many of their obstacles can be lifelong. One of the topics that we don't hear enough about in our school systems is when these kids with autism and kids with disabilities will grow up to be adults with disabilities. That's really why inclusion for me is one of the biggest topics that we truly need to talk about. During my journey as a professional speaker, I've gotten the opportunity to write several books based on my journey on the autism spectrum. About 3 years into my public speaking career, everyone started asking, Kerry, where's your book? Where can I learn more about resources that could help the disability community? So I came out with a book called Defining Autism from the Heart, based on when I got to high school, as someone who was considered on the severe end of the autism spectrum, who was told that he would never go to college. Once I actually got to college, everyone would go up to me and they would say, Kerry, you don't look like you have autism. And then I would be like, so what's autism supposed to look like anyway? And then they would say, Kerry, you have autism, but you seem so normal. And I'm like, what is normal supposed to be in our community anyway? So I wrote a book after coming out to my college classmates about having autism for the first time. And this book, I was expecting it to be a nice Christmas gift for my family, but within 3 days, it became an Amazon bestseller for special need parenting. And this gave us the platform to continue to write books to help our disability community. We wrote a book a year later for our mentees with special needs called Autism and Falling in Love, in the hopes of helping them pursue relationships with a disability and trying to find that special someone in their lives. And then another book called College for Students with Disabilities We Do Belong, which focuses primarily on inclusion, which highlights 17 individuals with disabilities who I actually got to contribute with two amazing autism advocates, if you've ever heard the names, Dr. Temple Grandin and Dr. Stephen Shore, and it focuses on their post-secondary education. Immediately following this presentation, we'll be in the back, in the hallway, doing a meet and greet and book signing. So if you want to learn more about these books, or just more about my personal story and how we can go to help every single one of you, because again, it takes a village. I would love to become a part of your villages here tonight. Please let me know. So I would say about 85% of our annual referrals are in K through 12. So we speak primarily on inclusion, but every once in a while we get to talk about autism, bullying prevention, the transition to adulthood for those with disabilities, and making sure that transitions are in their individual education programs. But it's also given us the opportunity, traveling around the country, to actually get to highlight celebrities and legislators who truly want to give back to the special needs community. It's given us the opportunity to work with individuals such as Anna Kendrick, Kevin Hart, who has been an incredible anti-bullying activist for several years now, Tommy Hilfiger, who has a son on the autism spectrum, and just recently started one of the first ever sensory-friendly clothing lines based on knowing the sensory challenges that his son has. Other individuals like Luke Bryan, who has seen firsthand the power that music can have on individuals with special needs, has actually gotten to meet several of his biggest fans who have disabilities who absolutely love country music. And then finally, Dr. Temple Grandin. If anyone in this room has the opportunity, especially with World Autism Month right around the corner in April, there's a great film on HBO On Demand right now that you can start watching called Temple Grandin. It's the movie about her life, which stars Claire Danes, and it's a great introduction for anyone who truly doesn't have an opportunity to know about our autism community. So during this journey, though, one of the biggest things, and this again goes on the theme of inclusion, that I truly want to highlight is the importance of making sure that everyone's stories are told. Every single person, regardless if you have a disability or not, have a voice. And in our community, again, because it's such a wide spectrum, We need to make sure that these kids who have disabilities have their voices heard. So a few years into our journey professional speaking, we started a Facebook page called A Special Community, where we highlight individuals impacted by a diagnosis, so both disability and disease. And the first question we ask every single one of these individuals when we bring a tripod and a camera and we ask them about their stories is, what would you like the world to know about you? In the hopes that by providing this as an educational tool, we could break down barriers for those impacted by a diagnosis. And I wanted to share with all of you tonight just one of the first videos we ever did with a boy named Liam, 8 years old, who wanted the world to know that sometimes because of having autism, it's hard to find connections. Sometimes it's hard to make friends. And this is what he wanted the world to know about his story.
So we're going to be talking to the camera, and we want to make you famous. So we literally want to make you probably the most famous person on the planet. How's this sound?
Okay.
No pressure.
Autism basically makes it hard to connect. It makes it hard to get that connection, to make friends. They feel like more loners than, well, in groups. It's also a learning disability, and in some cases, it's hard. You can't speak in some cases. I met a kid called Tom, who he has autism, but he can't speak in proper English. He needs an iPad.
So Liam, one thing I want you to know is that I was actually diagnosed with autism at an early age too. And I don't know if I've ever actually told you that, but I want you to know that I will always be here to be your friend if you need a friend, okay?
Yeah.
Because even though it may be hard at times to connect to other people, you know, I feel like so many people with autism like us just want like what anyone else wants, you know, to feel connected and to have a friend. So you always got a friend in me, okay? You want to pound this up?
Yeah.
Do you blow it up too? Oh, he blows it up. You're awesome, Liam.
I'm kind of tearing up. Sorry.
It's okay.
It's kind of a
So after we posted Liam's video, it went viral in our community, from educators to parents to kids his own age who simply wanted to let Liam know that there are people out there in this world who want to include him. There are people out in this world who will be your friends and want to have the opportunity to get to know you. And after it went viral, we just received so many messages from even kids his own age just saying, you know what, I feel the same way. And that's when we realized that we wanted to not only provide educational resources every single place we get to go to, but to meet each and every single one of these kids at their own level of development and simply give them a platform to share their stories. Our Facebook page has over 166,000 Facebook followers, where we get the opportunity. So many of these kids now get the opportunity, after a video goes up, to receive media opportunities. And on the other end of the spectrum, it's so amazing to see some of these kids who get to share their story about having a disability for the first time and a diagnosis for the first time, and actually go about going into their IEP meetings to self-advocate for themselves, to getting involved with initiatives such as World Autism Month, to share a little bit about how you could be helping others with autism in your community. But it doesn't only stop with autism. One of the most amazing stories I've just had the opportunity to interview recently involved two girls who are transitioning to adulthood right now, who deal with multiple disabilities. And one of the things that they simply want the world to know is that there is a stigma that sometimes revolves our disability community. Especially for many people in this room who might be personally impacted by autism, you might have watched a movie called Rain Man, where you learned right away that every single person with autism is a boy, and every single person with autism is great at math, and once they turn 21, they'll be able to win you a lot of money at blackjack. You know where I'm getting at. But that's not the case. And In terms of the spirit of inclusion tonight, I wanted to share one video of two girls who are trying to advocate for inclusion for everyone with a disability.
And we just want to hear your story today. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I am Cassie. I am 19.
You're 19.
Yeah.
Nice. What are some of the things that you want to do in the future?
Going to like one.
Going to school?
Yeah.
Nice. Going to college, maybe?
Yeah.
Where do you want to go to college?
You want
University of Arizona. Nice. For people at home who are maybe watching this, what would you like them to know about Chelsea?
She's sweet and nice and kind.
Oh, nice. Chelsea, do you feel the same way about her? Yeah?
A couple months ago, I asked my mom about it, like on my IEP. Like I just saw my disability. I just want to know how I got it.
Okay. And how old are you today?
18.
18. Woo! Adult life. How's it feel so far? When were you diagnosed?
Last year.
What is something that you both would like the world to know about you?
Like we're funny and we can like be friends and stuff. When they get to know us.
They get to know us, and by us you mean just people.
Me and Chelsea.
Me and Chelsea. You start Special Olympics.
6th grade.
Nice. And what was kind of like the reason behind that? What made you want to do that?
Because it's like something fun to do. Yeah. And I like we both like bowling and stuff.
Bowling and track. Nice. Chelsea, you like to run?
Yeah.
The photo. Awesome.
So one of the most important things, and trust me, this wasn't prompt, what Lizzie said was the fact that when you really take a moment to get to know somebody, regardless if they have a disability or not, it could be super, super life-changing. You don't know how kindness for just a few seconds saying that you want to get somebody, like these two amazing young women simply want the world to get to know them, could truly make a difference in everyone's life, not only towards inclusion, but also towards maybe even getting to meet a really, really cool friend. These two are best friends today, and they've been best friends since 6th grade, participating in the Special Olympics. And they truly, truly want to be inclusion advocates in the future. So during our journey speaking from nonverbal to professional speaker, one of the things that we realized right away is that there's so many stories like the Chelseas and the Lizzies of the world that we want to not only highlight in educational videos for our community, but also to provide coaching, mentoring, and training to. So we started a nonprofit about 8 years ago called KFM Making a Difference, where now we provide scholarships for students with autism to go to college. And then we also provide mentoring services for many individuals with special needs, but specifically focused on the topic of transition to adulthood. Now, this is perfect that we have an activity because I see so many people writing down notes and scribbling down things. But in terms of inclusion, and also in terms of what I mentioned about it takes a village, we have an interactive activity for everyone. We would like for every single one of you to pair up, preferably with somebody you don't know. I know it's like first day of school, trust me. And ask the person next to you this question. When was the first time you were introduced to the topic of autism? If you're a parent of a child with a disability, it might have just been when your child was diagnosed. If you're an educator, it might have been when you were going for your special needs degree. So for the next 3 minutes, every one of you will be answering this question. And while we're doing that, we'll also be providing handouts if you leave your email address on these handouts we're about to hand out, we'll provide the PowerPoint slides and the videos from today's presentation so you could spread them in your local community. So for the next 3 minutes, when were you first introduced to the topic of autism? Thank you. Hey everyone. This is really amazing that all of you are talking. I can't tell you how many times we've actually done this activity where it's like stone cold silence for 3 minutes and then we have to do karaoke. And I'm a horrible singer and you don't want to hear me singing Spice Girls on a Monday when you guys have a long week ahead of you. So for everyone, everyone should have received a handout. If you don't, we have a few more up here at the very end of the presentation. We'll be more than happy to give you one. And if you could leave your handouts when you're leaving tonight at the book signing table at the in the hallway. We'd be more than happy to make sure you get the PowerPoint slides and the videos from today's presentation. So it's actually funny. We were just having a conversation in the back about when I was introduced to the topic of autism for the first time. And it was actually during Rain Man. I was 3 years old, and my parents were watching the movie Rain Man, and I walked in on them, and I was like, wow, that guy is really, really quirky. And it reminded me so much about myself. Now, I wouldn't learn about my own autism diagnosis until I was about 11 and a half years old while I was actually in a social skills class and they were playing disability celebrity bingo, where we were learning that Michael Jordan has ADD, Magic Johnson has ADHD, and it was all about inclusion. And it was great. And at the end of the conversation, they said to me, all of these individuals are special, just like you. And then I raised my hand and I said, so why am I special? And I didn't know. And they were like, oh, this is above my pay grade. You have to talk to your parents about this, which I perfectly understood. It's a loaded question. But that initial introduction made me go up to my parents right after school and find out about my PDD-NOS diagnosis, which is a form of autism, for the very, very first time. And as I got older, I would sit in on my IEP meetings to learn more about my strengths and challenges of my autism diagnosis, getting to establish a rapport with my child study team. I now work with kids as early as 5, 6 years old when they're going into first grade on how they can actually go into their IEP meetings and learn how to self-advocate for themselves, because I think it's so important we get these kids to self-advocate for themselves at an early age. Another amazing topic I wanted to talk about a little bit tonight is that, especially in our disability community, it feels like a lot of the time we're focused 99.9% of the time on what our kids' deficits are. There's a common thing we hear in the school systems called the deficit model, where we focus all that time on weaknesses, but we don't focus on the talents. We don't focus on the strengths. I know several educators I've spoken to tonight in this room who are music teachers and art teachers who want to see more of that in their schools, and I thank you for what you're doing because it's so important. One of my best amazing advocates and role models, Dr. Temple Grandin, has a great quote where she says, interests and talents can turn into careers. So as part of our special community Facebook page, we realized we speak over 100 times a year, but we don't get to highlight every single story that we wanted to. So we actually started getting video submissions from people around the world simply wanting to share their story. And one of the first individuals that we actually got was a boy named Cheltenham, who's 10 years old, who we're actually going to see in London when we go speak there this week. And Cheltenham, at 6 years old, fell in love with music. He fell in love with Whitney Houston songs, and they're catchy, I get it. But after years of trying to find therapies that would work for him, we found music therapy to be something that would help him tremendously, especially with some of his sensory challenges and some of his social skill difficulties. And as a 10-year-old, he decided to share a video with us of what he would like the world to know about him. And it wasn't about, oh, I have autism, and this is that. This is what video he sent to us.
If I should stay, I would only be in your way. So I go, but I know I'll think of you where I reach there above the way. And I will always love you. I will always love you. My darling.
So this, yeah. So, and it gets me choked up every time. Once his video went on our Facebook page, he just simply wanted the world to know that he loves music and this is a part of who he is. And it went viral, receiving over 3.3 million views on Facebook. And then immediately following the video being up, just for about 2 months, he received a record deal in the UK. And a few months after that, was on Britain's Got Talent with Simon Cowell and actually finished in the top 10. So one of the most amazing things, obviously Cheltenham is very talented, that came from these videos though, was that now there were people, because they saw the video, all these amazing individuals impacted by a diagnosis, wanting to highlight their talents and wanting to highlight in video submissions what they would like the world to know about them. So every single day we shoot for either video submission or one of our interviews where we can highlight a new individual impacted by a diagnosis with the main message of letting them highlight their stories for the world to hear and giving them a platform. We've interviewed individuals as early as an 18-month-old with Down syndrome all the way to a 55-year-old woman with autism spectrum disorder. And it's been truly, truly amazing to see their stories, but also to hear, just to go a little bit more on the inclusion end, how life-changing it was to have the opportunity to share a little bit about their voice. So many of the kids I work with today feel isolation, and sometimes they feel like they don't necessarily have a team, they don't have a village of support. And to feel included in a way such as this really has opened their eyes to opportunities, not only to self-advocate for themselves, but to also find ways of spreading this in their local communities. We've had individuals come up to us who have started video series based on being interviewed to highlight other kids and other individuals in their community. And it's been such an amazing thing to see. My own specific diagnosis of autism, I was diagnosed in 1992. Now, the numbers of autism in 1992 were about 1 in every 1,000 being diagnosed, and today it's 1 in 59, with 1 in 5 Americans having a disability. Like I mentioned in the Today Show video, once I started talking, you couldn't get me to stop talking. as you can see here. And I said my first word when I was 3, and I started speaking in complete sentences at about 7 years old. It was a very, very long process of being able to build on my social skills, being in a multi-handicapped classroom through basically from 5 to 19. I was one of the only individuals with autism in most of my classrooms. But one of the biggest challenges early on when people ask me, Kerry, what was the hardest thing growing up with autism? It was the sensory challenges. Now, for so many of these kids, hypersensitivity for all 5 senses can be a challenge. I grew up in a big city. I'm originally from Jersey City, New Jersey, and now I live in Hoboken. And I was definitely afraid of bells, sirens growing up. I was one of the pickiest eaters you would ever meet in your entire life. I wanted bologna sandwiches for the first 8 years of my life for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and would ask my parents for that every single day. Other things, didn't want to be touched. So people have this stigma in our autism community about that people who don't like to be touched or hugged lack empathy. But a lot of the times it's just sensory-related difficulties. And the other big challenge was that I was a victim of bullying. Now, being a victim of bullying was very challenging, being on the spectrum and having a delayed communication compared to most of my peers who had disabilities of ADD, ADHD, Tourette's, dyslexia, and a wide range of disabilities. I was one of the only ones with a social and communication disorder. So it was very, very challenging early on. But also being in a multi-handicapped classroom, I was in, especially in grammar school, I was in a classroom, the one only special education classroom for kids ranging from 6 to 14. So I was usually bullied simply because one of the biggest things about bullying is that bullying truly is a power imbalance. You want to have the power over somebody else. And for a lot of the kids who were much younger in those classrooms, they were the most prone to be a victim of bullying. So growing up, though, one of the hardest things, though, was that even though we started getting social skills classes when I was about 12, I never was introduced to what a friend was. And I was never introduced to what a bully was. So a lot of the times, even though I was getting negative attention from bullies, I thought it was just some form of attention. And it was some form of trying to connect with people. And it wouldn't be until I was 12 years old when I actually started going into a social skills class, but also being part of theater, that I learned what a bully is, what a friend is, and actually role-playing scenarios to actually learn more about how I could go and interact with people for the very first time. So from this journey from nonverbal to professional speaker, again, the key interests and talents can turn into careers, and I can't tell you enough. For every single parent in this room who has a child who has a unique key interest, we live in one of the most diverse times in our history right now. I work with a 17-year-old who wants to play Minecraft all day. I know another 19-year-old who tells me all these leaderboards he is on for Call of Duty. But both of them love video game design and are actually going to college for that. And it kind of just blows my mind, the possibilities that are out there, even for some of the most talents that like 10 years ago you would never have thought could actually turn into a career. So it's truly, truly amazing. But these two interests were things that helped me. And the first one was music. Along with being the next Larry Bird, I also wanted to be the 6th member of the Backstreet Boys. Kid you not, the first birthday gift I ever asked my parents for was the white suit from the I Want It That Way video from 1999. Millennium Tour was soon thereafter with all the 16-year-old girls screaming, and I was just like, I want, okay, sorry. But there was something like very life-changing about that experience because for so many years, noise bothered me, but there was always something soothing about music. So my parents got me involved with music therapy. I couldn't sing a lick for the life of me. But I got involved with theater therapy as well during that time to help with some of my social abilities. And once I got out of high school and decided I wanted to become an autism advocate, I turned autism advocacy and theater into something that I could hope would help the future generations of Kerry Magros. I started blogging about it, and then just a few weeks after I started blogging about it for the first time, I received a movie offer from a movie director named Todd Graff, who was doing a movie called Joyful Noise, starring Queen Latifah and Dolly Parton. And one of the characters in this film has autism. And I was brought on to bring a realistic portrayal of autism to this film. And it was my first opportunity, again, on this inclusion theme, it was my first opportunity to truly get to not only get a credit in the film, but afterwards get to talk about disability representation in our entertainment industry, but also talk about inclusion. The biggest saying we have in the disability community focused on inclusion is nothing about us without us. Now I go across the country speaking to entertainment groups about simply getting individuals with disabilities involved, especially if your project is going to be focused on disabled characters, because it can be life-changing hearing from the experiences of these individuals. After that movie came out, I got the opportunity to work on several indie films as well, and to continue my work today, I got the opportunity to work with the social media team on the first season of The Good Doctor, which is on ABC, along with Atypical, which is a great show on Netflix as well. And then the second one was basketball. Along with sensory challenges, bullying issues, and social issues, one of my other biggest challenges was fine motor skills. But growing up, I could tell you all 30 NBA teams and every single player on one of those teams. And once I got to high school, I decided to use basketball as part of my physical therapy. I talked to my physical therapist about providing reward systems for me for doing like a certain amount of time on like a bike or doing like little things with like Play-Doh and Legos and all that to build on my fine motor skills. I got to play basketball, which was awesome. And that actually led me to being the varsity captain of my basketball team. And then once I got into college, I decided to start talking in my blog about the importance of physical exercise for those not only with disabilities, but for everyone, especially in terms of what we're talking about when it comes to retention. 30 minutes of cardio is what I tell everyone that you should be doing every single day. It doesn't have to be rough cardio. It doesn't have to be like running on a treadmill. It could be literally doing exercise. It could be doing daily routines with your parents, like going to the grocery store. Anything that will get you out for 30 minutes. And this actually led me to the opportunity to work with celebrities, which actually helped me branch out to focus on so many different celebrities and asking them to use their philanthropies to get involved with our community. It first started with NBA Cares, a nonprofit with the NBA, and actually talking to athletes about the impact that sports can have on individuals with disabilities. So just to wrap up tonight's presentation, before we go for a few minutes of Q&A, I just wanted to share 10 really quick things that truly helped me from this truly amazing journey from nonverbal to professional speaker. And the first one is something that I really hope our schools do a better job of, and that's providing transitional services. Now, when I went to college for the first time, I went up to my disability support specialist. I didn't even sit down in a chair. I was standing up and I was telling her, if you could just hook me up with that IEP, I'll be on my way. And she said, Kerry, sit down. So I sat down like this, and she told me for the first time that I was not going to be receiving an IEP. I was going to be receiving 504 reasonable accommodations, which is what people receive in the college level. And I was like, what? I was so confused, like deer in headlights. And now I go into post-secondaries and many high schools and talk to educators, but also to students about self-advocacy and the importance of providing transitional services. Role-playing is something that I've seen help tremendously in our community. It's something that helped me, but for so many kids I know with autism, tunnel vision is such a struggle. Being able to understand their perspective, but not be able to necessarily understand the perspectives of others. Being able to role play situations before they're actually going to go into the situation. There are therapies that are kind of focused on role playing right now. It's like social story therapy and visual schedules where you can implement this type of stuff. It did so much amazing work for me growing up as a kid. Servant leadership. President Obama was kind of like the big reason I actually started to get involved with service. He had a presidential service award that he was giving out while he was president. And I always looked up to just Obama because I wanted to be a speaker. I wanted to be as good a speaker as he was. And he actually became one of my role models when it came to speaking. And that got me involved with service. And then when I started doing service a little bit more, I realized, especially for someone who still deals with difficulties with tunnel vision, it made me understand that I might be going through challenges right now, but there are a lot of people in the world who are going through challenges right now. So I encourage all of our loved ones to volunteer for at least a few hours each year. I'm not talking about like 400 hours. I'm talking about like 10 hours annually, 10 hours monthly if you have the time, to truly understand the people in your community and what they're going through. Learning from other self-advocates, it still shocks me how many schools I go into who don't have a good peer mentoring program for their kids. When we talk about isolation and not talking about the real inclusion, we need to establish mentoring programs in each one of these schools so these kids can have an understanding of what's ahead of them, but also somebody to be there for them in the sake of inclusion. In addition to that, there's no one therapy that I could say, and this is the number one question I usually get during the Q&A, what therapy seemed to help you the most? I had 5 therapies throughout most of my adolescence, but one therapy that I want to highlight that really helped me was cognitive behavioral therapy. The impact that positive reinforcement could, and that was another big reason why we continue to do the video series, and we love to do the video series, because we love to give these kids something that they can be proud of, something they can feel positive about. Cognitive behavioral therapy was kind of a mixture of why this became such a passion project for me. Self-reflection, beginning with the end in mind. If you Google journal therapy after this presentation, there's so many amazing ways where you could get kids involved with learning more about their strengths and weaknesses by just sitting down with a piece of paper for 5 minutes a day. Physical activity, 30 minutes a day, just like I mentioned. Finding support networks. I'm also on the board of advisors for the Autism Society of America, and they have affiliate chapters throughout the United States, but they also have a few in Pennsylvania. They have one in Greater Harrisburg and Pittsburgh, I believe, and a few more as well. And then finally, writing a blog, because at the end of the day, I truly, truly think that we need to hear more stories from people in our communities, like every single person in this room. So finally, I often say that, I never expected this to be my life. From the earliest days of just like twirling, which is like running around in circles over and over and over when I was 4 years old, seeing that kid who was scared of the world around him and not necessarily knowing what his future was going to be at the point where I am now. I had no peer mentoring. I had no role models. Inclusion when I was a kid was not there. I can only hope that this topic of inclusion becomes a necessity in every single school. But most importantly, the right inclusion. Because a lot of schools talk about inclusion, but sometimes they talk about inclusion, and then when it actually gets coming down to inclusion, it's a budget cut. It's like something to actually help actual budgets in our schools. That's not what inclusion is. Inclusion is helping every single one of these individuals prosper and live the best lives that they can. So I'll just leave you with this last quote. I say autism can't define me, and I define autism. And I can only hope every single one of you in this room, whether you have a child with a disability, whether you have a child with any learning difference, whether you're an educator, whether you're somebody who cares about this community, you can go out there and define your lives and your journeys in the way that you best see it every single day. And if you need some place to get started, I have about 100 business cards in my left breast pocket here. So let's keep it going. Thank you all. And I know we started a few minutes late, but at the end of each of our presentations, we leave a few minutes for Q&A. So if you have any questions at this time, we'd be more than happy to answer them before we go.